Okay. So you'll notice that I think there may have been a different title for my sermon this morning. I think it was All Are Welcome. I changed it to Great Faith or Great Mistake. Hopefully you will see why that change was made as we go through this morning. You know, every now and then a gospel reading comes along that is hard to read. There are texts such as today's text that highlight very, very real issues and prejudices that were present in biblical times and today. It can make for an uncomfortable read. We look at this story of the Canaanite woman, and see a role model of faith. A woman with, as the Jewish community would say, chutzpah, or us in Jamaica, we would say something like bright and out of order. A woman who, through determination, persistence, tenacity, and strength, refuses to go away, even after being publicly shamed. She is doing something that, well, only some with deep love of another would do. Refusing to back down, standing firm in her conviction to speak for someone who can't speak for themselves. This, my friends, is a story about an unnamed woman that reminds us of an unwillingness to be dismissed, even by God, as the editor of the Presbyterian Outlook writes. It is a story about great faith. I think it almost impossible to read this story and not be overcome with emotion for the Canaanite woman who just will not, who refuses to slink away in shame or be silenced by others, not until she gets what she needs, the healing of her daughter. Reverend Duffield writes, who is the editor of the Presbyterian Outlook, she writes, like Jacob's refusal to let go until he is blessed, the Canaanite woman will not slink away in shame or be silenced until her daughter is healed. That kind of relentless faith work is what we need to summon in this season of racial reckoning and pandemic devastation, she writes. Hers is a demand for a seat at the table. And even if she is first denied, like those at the margins of our society and those who stand with them in solidarity and action, she will not be turned away, not until she is seen, heard, and until her daughter, whose life matters, is healed and brought back into society, brought back into community. As I read through the story of the Canaanite woman, I was reflecting on her story through the cultural milieu of today. How would this Canaanite woman respond? Respond to families without health insurance? How would she respond to students dealing with massive student loan debt? How would she respond to the school to prison pipeline, to ecological devastation, or to environmental racism? How would she show up to those in seats of power who jeer her, dismiss her, call her names, and try to silence her? As I continued to reflect on this strong woman, I could not help but notice the response Jesus gives to this unnamed woman. Have mercy on me, Lord, Son of David. My daughter is tormented by demons, she cries out. I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, Jesus responds. Am I reading this correctly? Did Jesus just make a mistake? Jesus is basically saying that since you are a Canaanite and I am a Jew, I have nothing to do with you. You can almost hear the same kind of narrative today with someone saying, you are poor, I have nothing to do with you. You are black, I have nothing to do with you. You are uneducated, I have nothing to do with you. You are an immigrant, I have nothing to do with you. You are a Jew, a Muslim, a Sikh, I have nothing to do with you. Lord, help me, she cries out. But Jesus' response seems to get even worse. It is not fair, he says, to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs. Was this another mistake? Maybe even a slip of the tongue? Nowhere else in the gospel tradition does Jesus address a sincere petitioner with such harsh and insulting language. Jesus doesn't insult the centurion asking for his servant to be healed that we read of in both Luke and in Matthew's gospel. Jesus doesn't insult the non-Jewish man in Gerasene possessed by demons that we read of in Mark's gospel. Nor does Jesus insult those parents of the royal lineage petitioning for the healing of their son in John's gospel. In fact, the harshness of the language is so unlike Jesus's words of caring and compassion that we have to wonder, why and what is this all about? It is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs. Scholars have debated for years about Jesus's very statement, this statement, and tried to come up with explanations. Was he joking? Was he just testing her? Or do we actually see Jesus in a less than flattering light in expressing his ethnic and religious prejudice? Scholars can't seem to agree. It's very, very close and very, very similar, this interaction between him and this Canaanite woman, to what we see now between Israel and Palestine. Either way you look at it, though, it is a tough, tough pill to swallow. If it was me in her shoes, I might have just outright got up and left. But the Canaanite woman responds saying, "Yes, Lord, yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the master's table." She does not take no for an answer. With ingenuity, she takes his mistake and flips it in her favor. She takes his mistake and flips it in her favor. And in doing so, she changes his mind. No more than ever, now, more than ever, We need as many individuals willing to make that kind of flip. Not take no for an answer when injustices are rife. We need more people who refuse to be silenced, like Congressman John Lewis, who calls us into good trouble for the sake of enduring equality for all people. Or those street physicians like Brett Fieldman in Los Angeles, who, despite the lack of equipment and protective clothing, day after day continues to go into the streets to serve the needs of patients with COVID-19. This is what the response is when you believe in God's love, when you believe in justice, when you believe in healing and grace. Regardless of our stations in life, we are compelled to respond to injustices with and through our different God-given gifts. And sometimes it is through the gift of shouting. Audre Lorde, in her speech, The Transformation of Silence into Language and Action, said, "I have come to believe over and over again that what is most important to me must be spoken, made verbal and shared, even, she says, at the risk of having it bruised or misunderstood." This Canaanite woman refused to keep silent any longer. She refused to swallow the tyrannies that would kill her and her daughter if she did not speak, if she did not shout and lay bare her petition for healing and restoration to the one who was unable. Her resolute cries, her great faith in the healing power of Jesus' hands, in his voice, led to the healing of her daughter and the restoration of a community's faith. So I ask you, is there something that you need to shout out? Is there something that we as a church need to shout? Can we be persistent, determined enough, like the woman from Cana, to ask the questions of God for healing, whatever that might be? This, my friends, this is the kind of great faith that we need right now, the faith that comes from the cries themselves, the great faith that comes from correcting the mistakes, the prejudices, and the injustices spoken and enacted against the others within our society. The great faith that has the power to change hearts, to change minds, and to change outcomes. So as we go through these next few days and weeks and months, let us as a church remember this story of the unnamed Canaanite woman. Remember this story the next time we see a great mistake of our time. Together, may we shout out to God for healing with persistence and determination. May we add our voices to hers with such a great faith. Amen.